Hello and welcome to the JSA Studio. I am your host, as always, Nathan, and today I'm coming at you with the next video in my Michigan position by position breakdown series. Today we will be talking about the Michigan tight ends and also their fullbacks. Now, before we get into the video itself, I do want to address the whole Connor Stallions drama finally ending, okay? This is Thursday for me, okay? I have to be at work in about an hour and 45 minutes, so this video is going to be a little bit, quick. But I want to address this. I don't know what the punishments are yet, okay? Because they haven't come out. It's not Friday for me yet, but it's Friday for you, so you know what it is. I will talk about this either in a video that's going to come out very late Friday or early Saturday at like 6, like I do on Monday, Wednesday, Friday at the absolute latest. It's just going to be a special upload, and then the uploads Monday, Wednesday, Friday will continue on like normal. And now, with all of that out of the way, there's only one thing left to do, and that is to get started by starting with my tight end one for this season. And that is Marlon Klein. He is someone that we saw a little bit of last year when Colston Loveland was hurt. He had one decent game where I think he had like 3 catches and 37 yards, although you can't really take anything from last year seriously when it comes to pass catchers because of how horrible the passing game was. One of the things that kind of surprised me, because you don't really see it on film, but people talk about Marlon Klein like he's a very, very good athlete. I think he's a good athlete for the tight end position, but people talk about him like he's a freak of nature. Okay, and that could just be press hyping up players, etc. Stuff like that. That happens every now and then. But generally speaking, if they're going to go out on a limb like that, there's some truth to it. Okay, it could just be he didn't have the confidence, or he, was struggling with the weight that he put on, so he didn't really look all that coordinated or fast to me on the film. But he is rumored to be a superior athlete. I think he can be a quality, potentially draftable even tight end. He's not going to be a Colston Loveland replacement. We're not going to get the production at the tight end position that we got the past few years. I just don't think so. I don't see any scenario where that's going to be matched by one person on this team, unless a player we're going to talk about later ends up breaking out and being like a superstar tight end, which is possible, but not particularly likely in my opinion. I fully expect Marlon Klein to end up being the every down Y tight end, which is the inline tight end. They'll probably split him out occasionally, although I think there are players better suited to be split out on the roster currently. Moving on now to the backup to the Y tight end, who is tight end 4 in my opinion, but we're going to talk about 2 and 3 when we get to H tight ends. He is Zach Marshall. And when it comes to him, yeah, I don't know if he's played in a game. I'm going to be honest with you. But Zach Marshall is a redshirt sophomore. He's got ideal size. He's listed at 6'4", 240, I think. And yeah, we haven't seen him play, so we don't really know a whole lot about him. But there has been a little bit of smoke surrounding the tight end room and how that's going to shake out. And most people have put Zach Marshall at 3 or 4 in that conversation, depending upon their opinions on Brady Pressicorn, who we'll get to later. However, we don't know anything about him, and I don't have particularly a whole lot to say. I do think he is more of a Y tight end, more of an inline hand in the dirt kind of tight end than an H tight end who's going to split out into the slot and be more standing up, more pass catching centric sort of tight end. But that is based off of absolutely nothing other than his body type and general sense of athleticism I got from watching a couple of high school highlights. we just don't know a whole lot about Zach Marshall heading into this season. But right now, I am projecting him on the tight ends 2 deep. Now we're going to go ahead and talk about Hogan Hansen, who I think has the potential to be a breakout star for this offense this year, because Hogan Hansen, to me, looks closer to Colston Loveland than anybody else on the roster, at least as far as I've seen them, okay? When you're talking about athletes, there is a certain level of natural athleticism that people often equate with looking smooth on the field, okay? This is why fast runners often don't look like they're running fast, okay? That's why you see commentators every now and then, they'll talk about how, you know, this guy was running so fast that it didn't even look like he was running. If you want to go old school, Darnell Green was a guy like that. New age, you could go Jamison Williams if you're a local Michigan guy, Xavier Worthy, John Ross if you want to go to Penn State. There are a ton of guys that are super, super, super fast that end up just not looking like they're exerting any effort to be fast, okay? Hogan Hansen does that, but not specifically because of being fast. He does that in a way, the same way that freshman Colston Loveland did that to me. He was just smooth. He looked like he belonged. He looked like he was playing football as opposed to thinking about what he was doing on the field, okay? Which is something that young players very often struggle with. They have to think about what they're doing. They're like, oh, I'm running a slant route, so I got to buzz my feet and get off the line if it's press. Otherwise, it's 3 yards forward, and then I got to break the outside and then come back in on the slant, okay? He didn't do that last year, okay? He looked like someone who was already confident enough to be a star, all right? I don't think he's going to be Colston Loveland, all right? But I do think, as of this moment in time, not seeing everybody, I haven't seen Zach Marshall. I also haven't really seen Brady Pressicorn, who we're going to get to eventually, okay? As well as any of the freshmen who have come in as well. I haven't seen any of them either. But of the tight ends that I've seen, he, to me, has the highest ceiling. Like, Marlon Klein probably is solid, maybe a draftable end of day 2, early day 3 kind of prospect, 4th, 5th round kind of guy. I think Hogan Hansen could be like a solid day 2 pick, like a middle 2nd round, late 2nd round, early 3rd round kind of guy. I think he's got that kind of upside. And it's largely based off of nothing. I have no reason to believe that other than looking at him and the way that he moves reminded me a little bit of Colston Loveland as a freshman. The backup H tight end that I have currently projected, based off of absolutely nothing, once again, like a lot of this video, because tight end is probably the position we know the least about in terms of both sides. I was going to say in terms of the offensive side of the football, but I'm running it through my head. Really, in terms of both sides of the football, we got no idea what's going on here. Like, we're pretty sure Klein and Hogan are going to be 1-2, and we got no clue what's going on underneath them in the 2 deep or the depth chart, okay? By the way, the picture on the screen is of Luke Schoonmaker, but Brady Pressicorn wears 86, so I put him up there because there wasn't really a pic that I could find of Brady Pressicorn in a Michigan uniform. Really, the only reason that I have him as part of the 2 deep, because again, this is based off of nothing, is because I actually saw this kid play live. He played at Rochester High, I believe, or at least it was a high school in Rochester. And I actually went with a buddy of mine to that game because he might have ended up having to play them in the playoffs that year. So we went to that game to look at him. And yeah, I think he's really good. I think he is something that is going to be able to project in terms of athleticism into being a quality player at the next level. Whether or not that happens at Michigan, I don't know. He seems like maybe if someone like Zach Marshall or Hogan Hansen really breaks out, those are both guys that are almost certainly going to come back next year. Then all of a sudden he's entering year 3, third on the depth chart. Modern football, maybe he's out the window. But that's really all that I have to say about the tight end position in general. However, I didn't want this to be a 10-minute video, so we're going to go ahead and talk about the fullbacks as well, which I did in previous videos, although normally I lump them with the halfbacks because that makes more sense, but they're with the tight ends in this video because I needed more time in the tight end video. And, of course, we have on the University of Michigan football team here the best fullback in the country, Max Bredesen. He is the definition of that dude. He is the GOAT fullback in the country. Period. End of discussion. He's got a legitimate chance with the revitalization of the fullback position in the NFL. And, well, that's largely because of the proliferation of the Shanahanian scheme, which does utilize fullbacks quite a bit. Because of that, and the fact that Kyle Shanahan at San Francisco has got so many goddamn assistants everywhere now, the fullback is making a comeback. He's got a decent chance to get drafted this year because he fucking murders people when blocking, and he's a good enough athlete to catch the ball some. It honestly wouldn't shock me if he ended up being the 49ers replacement for Kyle Juszczyk, who's, I think, entering year 13 or 14, so you don't really know how much longer he's going to be around. It wouldn't surprise me if they ended up drafting him, or perhaps maybe the Miami Dolphins, or another team that has a Shanahanian-style offense. But, Max Bredesen, he's that guy. I don't know what else you want me to say. He is an absolute stud at the fullback position. And finally, we've got the depth pieces here. Jalen Hoffman is listed as the backup, although he might end up being more of a tight end than a fullback. I think there's a possibility because he is a good enough athlete to be able to, stick in at a Y tight end or an H tight end, probably more so the H than the Y. But I do think that is a possibility that he could get moved to tight end, mainly because I think Eli Owens, who's a true freshman, and we know nothing about him other than when he committed, he was like the talk of the town for the coaching staff. They were all like, oh, yeah, we love this kid. I think he's probably the future of the fullback position, which is still something that Michigan values quite a bit. So Jalen Hoffman might end up being the odd man out, or he might end up being the starting fullback next year. I don't know. After all, what do I know? I'm just some asshole on the internet giving you his opinion. And it's at this point I'd like to remind you to like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and if you disagree with me at any point, or you just have something to say, go ahead and drop a comment down in the comment section below. And now with the outro done and out of the way, there's only one thing left to say, and that's that I'll see you next time to talk about Connor Stallions.